Ms. Bowen, recognized for 5 minutes, and welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Garrett, Ranking Member Waters, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the important work of the Securities Investor Protection Corporation. My name is Sharon Bowen, and I am the acting chair of SIPC. Because I also served as vice chair of the SIPC Modernization Task Force, I will focus on the forward-looking issues raised by that report. SIPC was created in 1970. With some narrow exceptions, every registered broker or dealer is a member of SIPC. Membership in SIPC is automatic upon registration as a broker or dealer. SIPC is not a government agency. Its policies are set by its 7-member board of directors, 5 of whom are appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. SIPC administers a fund which is comprised of assessments paid by its members. The fund is used to support SIPC's mission of customer protection and to finance SIPC's operations. Should the fund become inadequate for any purpose, SIPC may borrow against a $2.5 billion line of credit from the Treasury. In its nearly 40-year history, SIPC has never drawn on that line of credit. Every customer of SIPC is protected up to $500,000 against lost or missing cash or securities deposited with the broker-dealer for that customer's account. Of the $500,000, up to $250,000 may be used to satisfy claims for cash only. To date, SIPC has overseen the administration of 324 customer protection proceedings, which have involved the distribution through 2010 of roughly $109 billion of assets for those customers. Of that sum, $108 billion has come from the debtor's estate, and $1.1 billion has come from the SIPC fund. Former SIPC Chairman Orland Johnson promised Congress at his confirmation hearing that he would form a task force to conduct the first comprehensive review of the Securities Investor Protection Act and SIPC's operations since the amendments of 1978. The SIPC Modernization Task Force has completed its work, and the report and recommendations of the task force are attached. The task force reached out to obtain a broad input. It conducted a live forum in New York City to receive the personal views of individual investors. It held an internet question and answer forum with investors as well. A website was established to advise the public of the issues being considered and to solicit input from investors. In particular, the task force reviewed issues raised by recent complex litigation. In some instances, the task force recommendations will require legislation, and others will require rule changes. And some of the recommendations can be implemented directly by SIPC. We also considered areas where we decided there should be no change. Let me quickly cover some of the key recommendations. First, the task force concluded that SIPC should be amended to allow for inflation since 1980. In that year, the maximum SIPC advance was set at $500,000. In inflation adjustment dollars today, that level of protection would be $1.3 million, and the task force has concluded that that sum should be used and should be adjusted for inflation periodically. Second, the task force was presented with numerous cases where cash was being caught at a moment just before securities purchase or subsequent to a securities sale, and thus was subject to a lower protection. Because these results are somewhat arbitrary, the task force has recommended that we eliminate the treatment of cash and securities. Third, since small investors often have so much of their wealth in pension plans, the task force has recommended that we extend pass-through protection for pension plan participants that currently does not exist today. Fourth, and what we believe was an unintentional consequence of an amendment to SIPA, some SIPC members actually had their assessments reduced. We recommend correcting this oversight. Fifth, The task force recommended that CIPIC assist in creating an international association of investor protection entities. While CIPIC has memorandum of understanding with a number of these organizations, the Lehman and MF Global cases show that international issues will only increase in the future. Finally, the task force advocated that CIPIC continue to develop programs to fully educate investors about CIPIC protections and limitations on those protections. These are a few of the recommendations. I would like to take the opportunity to thank the members of the task force for their work, and I'd be happy to take any questions.